Hmm. Yes, in yesterday's last session, I forgot to start the recording. Okay, but now the recording is started. In future also, if I forgot to start the recording, please give me a reminder so that recorded sessions will be available for future reference. See, in today's sessions, it will be divided into three parts. First part is theory part. Second, I'll give you a demo of something. And third part is a hands-on part where you are supposed to perform some experiments. Code, I will post those codes in a group. Okay, I'll post the codes in our chat window, and then you can try those codes. You can do some experiments which you wish. And while performing those experiments, if you have any doubts or something like that, you can ask me. I'll solve those doubts, or if there is some error, first try that check whether there is any typing mistake or not, because mostly there are typing mistakes only. If there is a typing mistake, try to remove those errors and then move ahead. This thing. So here, the very basic question is like, okay, if you are going for hands-on, what kind of platform we should use? So it doesn't matter what kind of platform you are using. You can use any platform. So you can use Jupyter Notebook also if you wish. If you want, you can use PyCharm or you can use Spider. It doesn't matter. But let's say you don't have any of those setups available with you, or your machine is not having that great configuration to support PyCharm or something like that. For PyCharm, we require minimum 8 GB RAM. With 4 GB RAM, it works horribly bad. In that case, you can go with this. What you can say, Google Colab. So today I'll show you how you can use Google Colab also. It will hardly take 10 to 15 minutes to demonstrate you how Google Colab work, and then you can try these codes on Google Colab. The major benefit of using Google Colab is first you have portability. That whether you are at home or you are anywhere, it doesn't matter. You can work on. So location is not an issue. Second is devices is not an issue. Let's say you are on your mobile, still you can do the coding. You don't have to worry about whether I install anything on mobile or doesn't matter. And the third and most important thing is the speed. Now you are using Google resources, so you don't have to worry about how much RAM you have and something like that. But there is one downside. The downside is whatever you do on Google Colab, that is accessible to them. So it is no more your private property. Google can access it, Google can check it and all. So if you want to do some initial experimentation, training, testing some part and all, Colab is good. But if you're thinking about PhD, that is Colab is also good in that case. But if you are thinking about patenting your work, if you are thinking about what we can say, going for IPR and all, then those things you should not try on Colab, because the things are accessible, visible to Google also. So, and this is a commercial part. So in that case, please do not go with Colab. This is my general suggestion. But at initial stage, Colab is not a problem. So how many of you are familiar with Colab, that already work with Colab, something like that? Is there anyone that in past you have used Colab? Okay. Okay, there was already a message. Please start recording. So, Henry, sir, I started recording. Thank you for reminder. Then Saima madam is asking which data we'll be using today. Yes, I'll share that data also. Okay, some are saying that they are not familiar. So no problem. So first of all, I'll be using ILP dataset. But before directly going to ILP dataset, let's first see some theoretical perspective of a statistical analysis, why it is important and so on. What can be done? So we have only one session, that too at max 1.5 hours. So we'll not go into complete statistics, but let us see how we can use basic statistics for our benefits. So some of the basic statistics are maximum value, minimum value, average, or in many programming languages they call it a mean. Then we have standard deviation. So these four values alone can do a lot. These four values alone can do a lot. So let's say how these four values alone can do a lot. So let's say I want to identify outlier. But before identifying a outlier, my first question will be whether there is any outlier in a data or not. Whether there is any outlier in a data or not. So that is my first question. Outlier hai ya nahi hai? If there is outlier, then only I will remove. No? So let's say you have 5,000 records. It's 5,000 by 12 means what? There are 5,000 rows and there are 12 columns. And let's say and now I'm working on column number one, and I want to check whether there is any outlier in column number one or not. So how you will identify whether there is outlier or not? So can we use these four things? Yes, we can use these four things. Let's say we'll calculate some max number out of this of column one. Huh? In column one, there are 5,000 rows records or 5,000 values. I'll calculate maximum. I'll calculate then minimum. I'll calculate average, and then I'll calculate standard deviation. Let's say the maximum value is 100, minimum value is 0. So now it only tells us that okay, data varies from 0 to 100. But let's say average is 15. Now what it tells, when we say average is 15, there are 5,000 rows or there are 5,000 values for which we are having an average as 15, and maximum value is 0. It means what? There is something wrong, no? Maximum is 100. So if we are saying data is evenly spreaded from 0 to 100, if data is evenly spread or equally spread, then my average should be around 50. No? Okay, it can be 40 also, or it can be 60 also, depending on some values here and there. But it should be something in between, no? This 40 to 60. But our is 15, average is 15. It means what? There is something wrong. There is something wrong. And that wrong, we can consider it as outlier. That wrong, we can consider it as a outlier. So see, the simple statistics, that is maximum, minimum, average, this is telling us there is no need to even go for standard deviation. This is telling us that there is an outlier. And along with this, if you will calculate standard deviation also, then you will come to know how far the maximum point is from average. This may be important. So when we are doing a pre-processing of a data, when we are doing pre-processing of data, yesterday we also saw na, that pre-processing is important. And before applying any machine learning algorithm, we are supposed to pre-process the data. And in pre-processing the data, one of the step is remove outlier. And this is how we can identify whether there is outlier or not. Without any domain knowledge, this is how we can identify the outlier. Any doubt till this point? That how you can identify the outlier? Okay, then Saima Madam is asking that what does standard deviation indicates? Standard deviation indicates a deviation of a data from average value. It indicates what? Simply deviation of a data from average value. How much data deviates from average value. So if a standard deviation is low, it means what? Your data is centered. Your data is centered. For example, let's say Everyone know what is bell curve, na? Bell curve distribution or normal distribution. So most of the values are in this range, or let's say we can say that 70 to 80% values are in this range, and there are very some few values in this range. So here my average will be somewhat in between. Na? So if my values are moving from 0 to 100, there are some values in between, let's say 0 to 15 something like, and let's say here 85. So most of the values are in a range of 15 to 85. So average will be here, standard deviation will not that be great because very few values are over here. But let's say if my distribution is something like this, what will happen? My average will fall somewhere here. This is my maximum value. So deviation of values from average. So this is my minimum value, this is my maximum value. So deviation of values from average will be higher. It will increase. So that's the standard deviation. Standard deviation is important. Okay. So okay, Amit sir already answered that query. How far our data is from mean or our average. So one thing is this. Then now we know there is outlier. But how can you say that a particular point is outlier or not? So when you calculate this thing, minimum, maximum, and average, or we can say mean in many programming languages, the function is mean. So now we know there is a outlier. If we know standard deviation, we know how far it can be, but it is optional. So now we should know. Now we know there is an outlier, but how you will come to know which points are outlier, which points are not outlier? So for that, we can use box plot. For that, we can use box plot. So how we can use box plot for that? See, box plot, everyone must be knowing this. Let's say my values are in something like this: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 19, and 20. So total I have 11 values, and those values are in sorted order. So first, what I am supposed to do? Should I calculate average or median? So anyone who is familiar with box plot, so in while calculating box plot or these quartiles, Q1, Q2, Q3, interquartile range. So we go with median or average? Median. Okay, so Saima is saying we go with median. Amit sir, yeah, is it okay? Is it so? We are going with median? Yes. So median means what? You sort the elements and pick the middle value. Median means what? You sort the elements and pick the middle value. So here we have 11 elements. So middle value is like, okay, 5 is our middle value. Am I right? This is our middle value. So now this is our one half. This is our second half. So I have 5 here as a middle value. Now I have first half. We can say now I have a lower half. I have a upper half. So in lower half there are again 5 values. I'll sort those values and identify the middle value. That is 2. So here it's 2. This is the upper half. Sort the values and identify the middle value. That is 8. So this is 8. And now I have Q1, Q2, Q3. Am I right? So this is Q1, this is Q2, and this is Q3. So I have Q1, Q2, Q3. And this range of this is called as interquartile range, IQR. So IQR, I can simply say Q3 minus Q1. So that is 8 minus 2 is equal to 6. Am I right, Amit sir? Amit sir, Simon, is it right? that now my IQR is 8 minus 2, 6.
Yes,
Eh,
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So now this is my interquartile range, 6. So now normally it is not compulsory. Yeah? It is not compulsory. It depends on situation also. But normally you can say that 5 is my median. 5 plus 1.5 times IQR. Or I can say my median or Q1, sorry, Q2 plus 1.5 times IQR or minus 1.5 times IQR. This I can call as outlier. So here my Q2 is 5. So 5 plus 1.5 times our interquartile range is 6. This is 5 plus 1.5 times 6. So it is 9. So plus minus 9. So 5 plus 9, that is 14, and 5 minus 9, that is minus 4. So if there is any value above 14, if there is any value above 14, or if there is any value below minus 4, that can be considered as a outlier. That can be considered as a outlier. So here we can simply say that 19 and 20 are outliers. We can simply say that 19 and 20 are outlier on upper side. So normally फिर ऐसे कि यहाँ पे ऐसा प्लॉट करते हैं ना, ऐसा बॉक्स प्लॉट ऐसे आता है ना, समथिंग ओवर हियर, and there are some but certain points above this, there are certain point below this, and these points are considered as outliers. So this is how you can calculate the outliers. You can identify the outliers and you can simply remove those records. But it is not always necessary that it should be 1.5. It is not always necessary that it should be 1.5. Sometimes people do consider this value as 2 also. Sometimes they go up to 4 also, depending on the application. Depending on application. But in maths, that is what this is what they says, that your first median that you calculate plus minus IQR. So if anything is beyond this, we can call it as a outlier, and that must be removed. That must be removed. So any doubt till this point? Anyone? No? Okay, good. So they are saying that this thing should be removed. So let us see how thing why it should be removed and so on. Let us say why it should be removed and so on. So let us say we are working on regression. In regression, what happens? We identify some values for a1, b a1, a2, something like that. That is your attribute a1 into x1 plus attribute a2 into x2 plus attribute a3 into x3 and so on. So here x1, x2, x3, these are the weights that we are supposed to calculate. These are the weight that we are supposed to calculate. Let's say attribute 2 is having an outlier 100. What will happen? The entire term will shoot like anything. And my result will be wrong. Definitely, my result will be wrong. Uh, this is one thing when you are going for testing. But when you are going for training, because of this wrong attribute value, the weight associated with that will also be wrong. If attribute value is wrong in your records, then weight associated that which you calculate while training, that will also wrong. And if training is wrong, then there is no fun in testing. It will be wrong. And let's say out of 1,000 records, there are only one or two records which are outliers. And you are saying that okay, only one or two records, it doesn't matter a lot, but it may matters a lot. It may matters a lot. For example, let's say normally all the values are 1 or 4 in range, and this value is 20, which is outlier, and another is 19. What do you think? It will result in wrong weight. Why? Because according while training the algorithm, it will consider that okay, ठीक I should use this 20, and accordingly I should calculate the weight for particular class. So this thing is not good. So it should be removed. It doesn't matter whether it is one or two or three. If it is there, we should remove it. So this is for regression. But imagine when you are talking about a decision tree and all, you are talking about probabilities. Your probability calculation will be wrong. Your probability calculation will be wrong. And similar to this, when we are talking about multi-layer perceptron and all, imagine in multi-layer perceptron it is nothing but what weights. And if your input is wrong, if your input is wrong or if it is outlier, then what will happen? Weight required to get output, that will be wrong, no? The weight required that to get the output, that will be wrong, which will be calculated at the result. And even a slight change is also a big problem. Even a slight change is also big problem. So that is not a good idea. Okay, there is one question from Saima madam that sir, how do we choose the attribute? So there will be entire session on feature selection. So that will be our next session where we will discuss about how to choose the attributes and so on. Okay, thank you. So that's why outlier should be removed. So this is one thing. So mean, max, standard deviation, and one thing. So this is one thing about statistics. This is how the statistics is, even simple statistics, they are very useful. So now here we don't need to go for pandas and all, a simple thing. Now let's say I have 1000 records. These 1000 records belongs to two classes, class C1 and class C2. These 1000 records belongs to two classes, class C1 and class C2. Let's say they are evenly distributed. So there are 500 records belongs to class C1 and 500 records belongs to class C2. Now what is our task? We need to check whether the two classes are separable or not. Whether two classes are separable or not. Means what? If two classes are clearly separable, then classification is easy. But if two classes are not clearly separable, then classification becomes tricky. But with one or two attributes, this is easy. With one or two attributes, it is easy. Let's say my size of attributes is 1000 by 6. So I have six attributes: A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, and A6. Okay. Now assume in A1 class there are 1000 records. Na? So in A1 column there are 1000 records because there are we know size is 1000 by 6. So now consider this thing. I have divided this A1 column into two parts. One part belongs to class C1 and another part belongs to class C2. So now I know these 500 records of attribute 1 belonging to class C1 and this 500 are belonging to class C2. So now let us calculate minimum. If we calculate minimum, maximum, average, and standard deviation. And again here we are calculating minimum, maximum, average, and standard deviation. So now let's say minimum of attribute A1 for class C1 is, let's say, 10, maximum is 40. For class C2 it is again, let's say, 10 and maximum is 40. So now what you will come to know from this? Can I use attribute A1 for segregating the classes, segregating the records in two classes? Students should to know values are almost same. So this might not be that useful. Let us go further. Here, let's say the average is 15 and here average is 25. So now what it indicates? Now there is some hope. Oh, there is something. And what is that something? If I'm talking about A1 attributes belonging to class C1, A1 attribute values belonging to class C1. So let's say they starts from 0 and they goes up to 40. But what is their average? It's 15. So distribution is something like this. So you start from 30, 10, goes up to 40, but distribution is something like this. Why? Average is towards left side, na? Average is towards 10, na? So average is something like over here, means most of the values lies on this side. And if we are going for A1 attribute belonging to class C2, it starts from 10, it goes up to 40, but average is 15. Average is 15. So it is biased toward this. So starts from 10, goes up to 40, but average is 25 something. So now you tell me, can you use this attribute A1 to differentiate between class C1 and C2? Any comment from anyone? Can we use it? Can we use attribute A1 to differentiate between class C1 and C2? To a certain extent, yes. But only A1 will not be sufficient. But at the same time, we can say that yes, it is useful, we can use it. It is useful and we can use it. But only A1 is not sufficient. Let us go to, let's say, there is another attribute A3. Ah, there is another attribute A3. Again, we have two classes C1 and C2, 500 records each. Now, for C1 class, attribute A3. So let's again go in same manner. A3, we have C1, we have C3. Now, what happened? Hmm. Now, if we'll calculate, let's say minimum, maximum, average, and standard deviation, something like this. And again, minimum, maximum, average, and standard deviation. Let's say minimum value is 5, maximum is 70. Minimum value is let's say 30. Maximum is let's say 120. Here, let's say the average is 35. And now here we can say, let's say average is 75. Now tell me, what about A3? Anyone would like to, would anyone like to comment about A3? With for class C1, minimum value is 5, maximum value 70, average is 35. Forget about standard deviation now. Here, minimum is 30, maximum 120, and average is 75. So how useful it can be for classification? Anyone wants to comment? Please feel free to unmute yourself and speak. Okay, no one. See, now if you'll observe carefully, here average is 75. Here average is 75, even though we are having minimum as 30. Even though we are means what? Most of the values are above 75. Most of the values are above 75, and this average 75 is because of this some minimum value which is 30. And here maximum is 70, but average is going more towards 35 centered. So now A3 attribute is very important when it comes to classification. A3 attribute is very important when it comes to classification. So now I can say that A3 is very important, A1 is also important. Now, if I'll use alone A3, it cannot give me maximum accuracy. If I'll use alone A1, it might not, it will not give me good accuracy. But if I'll use combination of A1 and A3, it can give me a good accuracy and so on. So this initial thing also you can tell with the help of basic statistics. So basic statistics are not useless. And let's say sometimes when you are going with tricky classes, tricky classification data sets, and you have file attributes A1 to A5, and all attributes A1 to A5 are tricky. All attributes A1 to A5 are saying are like this. Pay attention. Are something like this our A1, like this our A1, where you have minimum value, maximum value, and average, almost similar. Here average is bit different, also quite a different. But if they are similar, then you understand that the data set is very difficult for classification. The data set is very difficult for classification. So for example, let's say I have attributes A1, A2, A3, A4, and I have two classes C1 and C2. And for both the classes, my situation is something like this. Let's say situation in terms of minimum value, maximum value, average, and standard deviation. Minimum value, maximum value, average, and standard deviation. So let's say the minimum is 10 over here, a minimum is 10 over here. Maximum is let's say 40 over here, maximum is 50 over here. Average is let's say 25, average is let's say 27 over here. Standard deviation 3, standard deviation 4 over here. So now what happens? These two things for attribute are almost same. It cannot, now I cannot segregate class C1 and C2. I cannot segregate class C1 and C2 based on A1. Now let's say it is something like this: 12, 11, 60, 62, 35, 36, 3, 2.5. Same situation. I cannot segregate with the help of A2 alone for these two classes. Uh, let's go with similar thing over here: 72, 74, 31, 32, 3, and 3 over here: 12, 11, 62, 59, 30, 29, 2, and 3. Now, if you'll observe it carefully, what you will come to know? None of the attribute is qualified alone. None of the attribute is qualified alone to segregate the records into two parts, that is class 1 and class 2, C1 and C2. Along with that, even though I'm taking combination of A1, A2, A3, A4 together, things are not that easy. Things are not that easy. So this will simply ensure that your classification accuracy cannot be good. Classification accuracy cannot be good. So means what, your task is challenging. Your task will be extremely challenging, and this is something which it ensures, or it simply says ki yes, it cannot work. So let me give you one example from my own PhD dataset, so which I used during my PhD work. Where is that file? Share. Okay. So this is my PhD thesis. I'm not going to show you the PhD thesis. Forget about it. It's not good. See here, there are different classes. So these are my classes: black, normal, pod, not my classes, classes present in the data set, black, normal, ping of death, teardrop, land, Neptune, and smirk. So these are the names of attacks, and normal means no attack. And there are 12 attributes, attribute 1 to attribute 12, which I have selected. So now if we'll observe this back class and normal class. So see what it is saying. This is the median values of the attributes. I'm not talking about mean, average, and median values of the attributes when the data set was divided into three bins. So if you'll observe values carefully, it's 0.00, 0.009, 0.00, 0.00, 0.08. It is 0.51, this is 0.50, 0.51, and this is 0.46, 0.36, 0.35, 0.36, 0.36. So most of the attributes are similar. So this is one table for median. Similarly, I have prepared table for other things also. So table is for median, table is for standard deviation, then table is for average also. So if we'll see average values 1.15, 1.15, 1.48, 1.38 for average, 2.0, 1.89, 1 and 1. It's almost same. So average, then this is for standard deviation, and then for median values. So it is almost same. And because of which it was extremely difficult to differentiate between back class and a normal class. So this was the simple thing that I came to know after analyzing simple statistics. There is one question from Amit sir. Amit sir, just give me a few minutes. I'll answer your question. Huh? So it simply indicates it is very difficult. So their question was why accuracy for back class is less. So I combined yesterday. My answer was the accuracy for back class is less as compared to normal class because one is this attributes are almost similar, and my second answer and second point was from here. For normal class, there are 9,72,000 records in training data set, and there are only 2,203 records for back class. Means what? The training data is highly biased towards normal class, and at the same time, if we'll compare the attributes, attribute values for back class and normal class are almost similar. If I'll compare standard deviation, average, and median, because of which the accuracy of a back class is going to be less only. Because of which accuracy of back class is going to be less only. It doesn't matter which classification approach I'm using. Data segregating two different classes based on data is very very difficult. And they agreed it, and they were okay with my 75% accuracy also, because they are saying with such a high imbalance and such a similar nature in data, still I'm able to segregate 75% records. That is good. That was their comment. So, and this thing one can easily know before starting the machine learning also. Only simple statistics. You don't need to start with machine learning. Simple statistics. Yes, one can know. And now, based on this, there is a question from Amit sir. Amit sir asked a question that, okay, can we consider it as a dimension reduction mechanism? Amit sir, yes, this is a very, very primitive or very, very basic dimension reduction mechanism. But you cannot, yes, sir. Amit sir, you're not audible properly, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Now it's,
Yes, sir.
yes, now it's clear, sir.
I can hear you, sir.
Yes, sir. Any questions,
Yeah,
sir?
yeah. No, no, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. See, this cannot only alone be. See, now what we know that A1 alone is not okay, A2 alone is not okay, A3 alone is not okay, A4 alone is not okay. Since now can we delete all the features? No. Now what we need to do? Now the simple thing is, yes, there are some differences. So we need to use all these four features together. We need to use all these four features together. So this one. So this thing basically you can use to identify whether the separability of the classes is easy or not. Whether the separability of a classes is easy or not. And yes, now we can identify, yes, separate. Now from this I know separability of a classes is not easy. So one thing can be done. Let's take an example with the help of 2D data. So plotting a 2D data on a graph is easy. This is x1, this is x2, and let's say I have two classes. So one with cross, another with zero. Now tell me, can I easily say that these records are separable? Yes. Line can be easily drawn. Why? It is 2D data. Now, if my data is something like this, so cross is one class, circle is another class. Now, is my data easily separable? No. These are circles, these are crosses. I cannot easily separate it. I need to take a proper curve. But this one can easily say by seeing the data, because it's 2D data. They can say that it is not easily separable, but I can have some sort of curve. But if a data is 3D data, if it is 4D data or 5D data, can you easily say this? That it is not easily separable. I need to have a curve, or that separation will be very difficult. Can you say it? No, because we cannot visualize 4D data or 5D data. Up to 3D will be okay. 4D, 5D, 6D, and all it becomes easy. It becomes extremely difficult to understand those curves or those planes. So this is a simple mechanisms. That's why we can use this simple mechanism, that can we separate it or not, like this. Any doubt till this point? If there is no doubt, then I can go with Python implementation of this thing. Okay. Okay, which data is preferable, 2D or 3D? Damajyoti ma'am, nowadays, if you are doing research, 2D data means what? If I'm saying 2D data, 2D data means there are only two attributes. 3D data means what? There are three attributes. But nowadays, if you are doing research, so you know in your data there are tens of attributes. Huh? Normally there are tens of attributes. Sometimes it goes up to 200 also. So if there are 10 attributes, your data is 10D data. So the number of dimension is equal to number of attributes. So definitely your data will be more than that. So when you are talking about images, then sometimes you say that, okay, my image is a 2D data, 2D image or 3D image. So 2D image means there are only two dimensions, X and Y. 3D image means what, there are X, Y, Z dimensions. Sometimes we can call it gray image as 2D image and color image as 3D image. Why? Because there are three planes, R, G, B, or something like that.
Yes, sir. Mm,
Okay, thank you.
okay, thank you, sir.
So let's go to some part of coding. Share screen. Okay, now I'll answer that question of which data I'll be using for today's session for training. So see, I'm sharing this link with you. So this is a Indian liver patient data set. So I'm copying this link in our chat window. So you can take this link. So you can download this data. So this is a Indian liver patient data set developed in India only, Andhra Pradesh, by our own people. So here, if you will click on data folder, so there is something called as the Indian liver patient data set. You can click on .this CSV and CSV file will download it. It doesn't matter whether it looks like a Excel file or something like that. Chalta hai, it's a text file only. And if we'll click on this dataset description, if we'll click on this dataset description, below here the description is available. This is basic description that okay, the values are integer values and real values. There are total 10 attributes in our data. Number of records are 583. It is a real life real area. When the data was donated, it was not created here, donated to UCI. So it's old data. So 1,43,232 people have downloaded it, something like that. It can be used for classification. There are no missing values and something like that. Now, if you'll come down here, they are giving the information that okay, the dataset contains 416 liver patient records, and 167 non-liver patient records. So this simply indicates the data is biased. There are more records of liver patients and less records of non-liver patients. Then if it says male, there are 441 records of male patients or male humans and 142 records of females. So again, this data is biased toward males. So the data is two-way biased. And now this is very interesting. Any patient whose age exceeds 89 is listed as 90. Means whether you are 91 years old, 92 years old, 95 years old, it doesn't matter. The age will be listed as 90 years old. And then they are giving information like, okay, which are these 10 attributes? Age of a patient, then gender of a patient, then what is TB total, this DB direct, bilirubin, and alkafos and everything. These are 10 attributes. And finally, it is labeled as whether a particular patient is having a liver disease or not. So in all, there are 11 columns. Out of those 11 columns, first 10 columns are attributes, and 11th column is a class which indicates a person is a patient or not. So this is our data, Indian liver patient data set. This data set is quite a tricky and challenging data set to achieve a good accuracy above 90%. People have used this data earlier during their PhD, but nowadays they are not using. But yes, once this data is used by people for their PhD also. So this data is having some worth to explore on. So have you downloaded this data set? So what you are supposed to do, download this data set and upload that data on your Google Drive. Download that data and upload that data on your Google Drive. Do not create any folder to upload it. Simply upload that data on your Google Drive. So I have uploaded that data on my Google Drive and it is available on the drive. So once you have uploaded your data on Google Drive, what we can do is this. I can use Google Colab. So if I want to use Google Colab, a simple thing. If you want to go for Google Colab, first thing that you need to do is you must be logged in your Gmail or on your Google account, and then simply type collab.research.google.com. So you can simply type collab.research.google.com and press enter. So the moment you will press enter, if it is your first time, it will show you this thing, welcome to Google Colab and something like that. Here you can simply click on create a new notebook. So if you want to create a new notebook, you can click on new notebook. But if you already worked on it, then there will be something. Those notebooks will be visible over here. So in my case, certain notebooks are over here. So if I want to create a new notebook, I will simply click on a new notebook and I'll get this blank notebook for working. So now here I can write my Python code like Jupyter Notebook. I don't need to install anything on my machine. Everything is between your browser and Google server. It's easy. So I'm saving it. So class, do you want few minutes to do this? That download that data, upload that data on a Google Drive, and then create a notebook.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It will hardly take 2 or 3 minutes, not more than that. So you can take the that time. And once it is done, please post that done on chat window so that I'll come to know it's done. And if you are facing any trouble or doubt, simply unmute yourself and ask. So here, okay, I already tried something. I'm copy pasting few codes, some lines, and I'll explain those lines also, just to save the time because we don't have much time remaining with us in this session. So first is from google.colab, we import Drive. So why we import Drive? Because if I want to access any file present on my Drive, I need to use this from google.colab, import the Drive. And once the drive is imported, I'm supposed to mount that drive. I'm supposed to mount the drive. This drive.mount. So these are two lines which are important, and only these two lines are required if you want to access anything from the drive. First, import this drive. So this is the library that we are supposed to import. And after that, simply drive.mount. So inside the content, there's a drive folder, mount that. So if I'll run it, it might take few seconds depending on how Google is responding you. So now what it will do is it will ask, okay, this is the browser. Now what it is asking us for authentication code. So what I'll do, I'll go to the server. I'll click on that URL. I'll go somewhere. So now it will ask me, okay, select the account. So I'll select one account. So this is the account that I want to use. Now it will say, okay, allow. Here I'll get a code. Copy it, paste it over here and press enter. So this will tell, okay, this is the authorization code and now things are done. So now it will tell us, okay, yes, the drive is mounted and these are the contents. So it's saying, okay, it's mounted. And now I can use that OS library present in my Python, import OS, and then I can simply use for loop for file in os dot list dir. So list dir is a function which returns the names of files present in current folder, and I'm using for loop to display those files one by one. So I'll simply print it, print file name. So I'm printing the file names which are present in this current directory. So if I'll run it, it's saying, okay, there is a drive and there is sample data. So if we want, we can simply click on this folder icon over here. If you'll click it, simply say, okay, there is a drive and sample data. So inside this drive, there is a my drive, and inside my drive folder, you will find all the files which are there on your drive. So it is not necessary that every time it will be my drive. Sometimes people do rename it. So what I can simply do is I can simply write it over here, drive. So it is telling me, okay, inside the drive, there is my drive and these are okay, trash and all, forget about it. So now I can go with drive slash my drive. So now I have list of all the files. So this is how I can access Google Drive from Google Colab. Okay, I'm writing it break over here so that my output is short. After displaying only one line, it's done. So this is how I can access the contents of the drive. Now I want to access that file which I have already uploaded. So what I can simply do now, I know this is the location where file is available. So what I can simply do, uh, I know file is downloaded somewhere. So I can simply copy the name of file from the downloaded location, something like that. And now I can use something like this, file path, sorry, file name is equal to dot csv. This is my file name, and now I can open that file using Python. I can simply open it like this now with open first path. So this is my path of a Google Drive. So I'll copy that path first. Here I will add slash plus my file name. I add some handler as file. So here I'm saying this is the path in which file is present. This is my file name, and I'm concatenating both the things with the help of plus operator and file. And now I can use for loop, or I can use anything to read the file line by line. So if I want to read the file line by line, I can simply write for line in files. It will read this file line by line, and I can print this thing, the print line. So my contents of files are displayed over here. And here, let's say a break, so that my output is short now. I'm just displaying output of only one line. So this is how we can mount the drive, list the contents of a drive, and then access a particular file. So this is a file that we are going to use and do some statistical operations on it. So okay, I'm copy pasting these things. Copy. Uh, uh, okay, I'm copy pasting these things in our chat window so that everyone can copy paste these codes and try on their own. And while trying this code, if you are having any problem or in doubt, please unmute yourself and ask those doubts.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, good morning. This is Ramesh, sir.
Yes.
Sir, before going to the actual programming,
Yes.
okay, so first of all, I have to download the data set, then I have to put it in my drive. So then only I can access that data.
Yes. But do you have PyCharm or any other IDE with
So I
installed
have
on your
a
machine?
Jupyter notebook. I have a Jupyter notebook.
Okay. In that case, what you can do, you can upload that file on Jupyter Notebook also, no?
And actually, I'm trying to do it in Google Colab. I
Okay, you
have
want.
experience. I'm working on Jupyter notebook, but it is not able to solve for ANN or RNNs. So that's why I'm using Google Colab.
Okay.
Okay, so in that scenario, I am unable to access the data what I have in my system. So that's why I'm asking you
fir-
this question.
First, you need to upload that data on your drive.
Okay,
And once the data is available on your drive, then you
okay,
can access that data through the codes that I have shown you now.
okay. So thank you.
Okay. Uh, okay. Is it done? Or you want two or two more minutes to try this thing? Okay. If it is done, please post in the chat window so that we will come to know. Yes, madam.
Sir, actually, I click on that authentication link, copied that code from the Google account, but it is not going to paste it.
So you're not able to paste it, or it is not accepting that code.
It is not, means I'm not able to paste it.
No, simply click on that window
Yeah, I did.
and press Control V. Press Control V or right click paste.
The paste option is not coming, and Control V is also not means working.
Okay, ma'am. I'm giving you a sharing permission. Just a minute. Mm. Ma'am, you are a co-host now in this session. You can share your window, ma'am. You can share your screen so that I can see.
1 minute, sir. Sir, is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
See, sir, this is my code. I copied it,
Okay.
and here I'm going to paste, but there is no any option. And control. Now it is working.
Press enter, ma'am. Yes, it will be done.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. What about others? Have you completed? Okay. If you are facing any problem, then please let me know. Otherwise, at least post that you have done completed with it. Okay. Amit sir is done. Okay. I'll continue with next lines of code. So here now we'll simply see how we can use plain Python instead of using pandas library for analysis. Pandas library we'll see in another session because many times pandas is not at all required. Unnecessary, it increases the complexity. So first I'll import numpy as np, something like this. So here now what I'm going to do, this is my text file and I want to convert this text file into an array. So if it is array, then I can easily perform a different types of operation on it. So how can I do it? The simple thing is I have this one line. So instead of printing this line, what I'll do, I'll convert this, I'll split that line. So if I'll split it, it is simple like this, line dot split. So this is one line which I have read from file. I'm splitting it on comma because the file is comma separated file. And what I'm going to do is I'm printing this array and then it is followed by break because I don't want to show so many results. After one entry of a file, I'll simply break the loop. Now you can see here. Okay, to make things simple, first I'll print the line. See, so this is the one line which is read from the file. If you'll observe the line, every value is separated by comma. 65 is the age, comma, gender, comma, and so on. So that's why I'm splitting it on comma. So once it is splitted on comma, it will create an array. And first value will be 65, second is female, and everything something like this. But if you'll observe carefully, Then last value there is backslash n at the end, but we don't want backslash n. We want only one. Na? So how we can solve it? The last value in the list is accessed with the help of minus one. Minus one is last value. So what we are doing? Last value dot replace. So what we want to replace? I want to replace backslash n with what? Nothing. So now, and I'm receiving it in last value only. So why I'm using minus one? Minus one means last entry. If I don't know the index number of a last entry, I can simply write minus one. Minus one means last index in an array. Now if I'll run it, you can see it. There is one, but there is no backslash n. So it's done. So I can simply replace that backslash n by nothing. But if you'll observe, these values are 0.7, 0.1, 187. These values are in single quotes, means they are string. These values are in single quote, means what? They are string. So it's not a good. If I want to do statistical analysis, everything must be a number. Everything must be a number. But again, there is a male and female values. So there is a problem. So what I can do to solve this problem? What I know, female is at location 1, na? 0, 1. Python is 0 based language, na? So index is 1. So what I can do is something like this. If ARR of 1, if it is double equal to female, I can replace ARR 1 by 1. So if it is a female, I'll mark it as 1. Else, I'll mark it as 0. So now all the values are in numbers. See, and now I can convert this array from string into number. I can convert this array from string into number. For that, I can use numpy also. At simple like this, I can say, let's say ARR is equal to uh, np dot array. So the name of array is ARR only, comma. What should be the data type of that array? So I can write np dot, sorry, I can write d type, data type is equal to np dot float 32. So now what I'm saying, I'm using NumPy libraries to convert this list in which there are a few strings, the one number that were added. I want to convert it into float type because our numbers are floating point numbers now into array. And now I'll print it. And now you can see these are floating point numbers. Am I right? 1 point something, 1.8. It doesn't matter whether it is plus one, forget about that. Don't think about that. But these are floating point numbers. And since these are floating point numbers, I can easily perform statistical operations on this. I can easily perform statistical operations on these things. So it's not that difficult. So here, what I can do is something like this. I'll create a features list, which is an empty list. And what I'm doing now here is this. Every array which is there in for loop, I'm appending it to features list. Features dot append means I'm adding this array into feature list dot append ARR. So when this for loop is done, I'll have a features array. I'll have a features array, and I can convert that array into floating. Now this I have this features array, but it is not in NumPy format. So I can convert it as a NumPy array. Features is equal to np dot array features, comma, data type is equal to np dot float 32, and then I can print this features array, and we can print the shape of features array. Oh, could not convert string to float. Oh, did something wrong over here? What I forgot? It ones and zeros only, no? So feature sort append. Hmm, some mistake from my side, I guess. Give me a few seconds. Let me solve the problem. And features. While I'm printing, I guess everything is fine. Okay, then what I can simply do is directly convert this into array. Okay, now, okay, I hardly have 8-9 minutes. I'll do that in at the beginning of next session. First, at least do something properly. So here now I have array. So what I'm trying to do, I'll convert this array into numbers directly. So how can we do that? We can simply do that with the help of NumPy method. Let's say ARR is equal to np dot array ARR comma data type is equal to np dot float 32 and then print ARR followed by, okay, just to break. Yes. So now we have proper output. Now let's say I want to do a statistical analysis on column number 2. Our column number 2, if we'll see properly, our column number 2 is this. Column number 0 is patient age, column number 1 is gender, and column number 2 is a TB total bilirubin value. So now I want to do analysis of this TB total bilirubin value. So what can I do? I know it is column number 2 now. So here I can simply write call to is my array, and what I can do is something like this. I can say call to dot append. So while appending the value into column 2, I'm converting it to integer because I'm converting it into float because I know the value original is in the string format. It is in single quotes, no? That is ARR of column 2. And inside this uh, with statement, if I'll print this column 2, print call to, this I'll get the entire column 2. Okay, so I'm copy pasting this code in our chat window for your reference. So the code is in chat window for your reference. Subhash sir, thank you for your advice. That try ARR to list. So the code is available to you. Oh, okay. It went as a private message. Sorry, it should go to everyone. So the code is now available in your chat window. So you can try this code. And now on this code, I can do some operations like printing the minimum value, maximum value, and something like that. So for that, I can use directly dot mean function. It is available in Python. Minimum value of call to. Then I can print maximum value of column 2. So yes, no, minimum value 0.4, maximum value 75. If I want to use some numpy functions, I can use those numpy functions also. Let's say numpy dot average, and to which I'll pass call to. And now if we will see, minimum value is 0.4, maximum value is 75, but the average is 3.29. Means there are some outliers, and those outliers are highly outside the range. Those outliers are extremely highly outside the range, and those should be removed, and those outliers need to be removed. So this is simple thing how we can check. So we can read the file, and now we can use simple functions. So now it's already 11:25. So what I propose is I can complete. I need 10-15 more minutes. So can I take this thing in next session? So at the beginning of next session, first we will cover this part, and then we'll continue with feature selection. Is it okay? Because it's already more than one. It's almost 1 hour and 25 minutes. Okay. Uh, then second thing, before that, you can try these codes. Codes are available already in your chat window. Please try these codes and see if you are able to run these codes. And while executing this code, if you are facing any problem, then please feel free to ask at the beginning of next session. And yes, at the end of the day, I'll share this. I'll share the links of all the videos. We are uploading all the videos on YouTube. So it takes some time to upload the videos and generate the link. But yes, at the end of the day, you will get links for all the videos. And if possible, I'll share the link in break also for session 1.